As a child, I was raised by my mother since my father, who was a soldier, was often away for work, and I seldom saw him. My mother was always thoughtful and attentive, ensuring everything at home was just right. Every now and then, my uncle would come by for a visit. He was always so generous, bringing us presents and making us laugh. I trusted him completely. Now, at 20 years old, I am a university student, and life seemed to be going well. Everything felt normal until an event occurred that changed everything. One day, after classes, I returned home exhausted. My body was going through the usual changes since my period had started, and I wasn't feeling my best. My uncle was visiting again, and since he had always been a part of the family, I didn't think twice when he offered to help me with my schoolwork. He sat next to me on the couch, close enough for me to smell the cologne he always wore. Initially, everything seemed normal, just like any other day. We chatted, and he asked about my classes and how I was doing. The conversation flowed naturally, and I didn't suspect anything unusual. After a while, I started feeling even more tired, so I told my uncle I needed to rest. He smiled kindly and nodded, and I got up to head to my room. Little did I know, my uncle had something else in mind. As I entered my room, I thought about how fortunate I was to have such a loving family. My mother was always there for me, and my uncle had always treated me with such kindness. I had no reason to worry, but something felt slightly off that day. I couldn't put my finger on it, so I brushed the feeling aside, thinking it was simply because I was tired. I changed into my comfortable clothes and sat on my bed, hoping to get some rest. My mind drifted back to the conversation I had with my uncle. He had asked more questions than usual. At first, I thought he was just being friendly, but now, as I lay there, I began to wonder why he seemed so interested in everything about me. I was on my period, and my body felt different than usual, making me feel restless. My thoughts wandered to strange places, and it felt like my body had its own desires, especially during those days of the month. I often experienced a confusing mix of emotions that I wasn't sure how to handle. Back during my time at boarding school, things became much more complicated. Surrounded by so many girls, I was constantly exposed to new ideas and experiences. There was always chatter about everything, including periods. My friends spoke about it so openly as if it was just another part of life. They shared tips and tricks that made it sound so normal, and it was hard not to get swept up in their excitement. One day, while sitting in the dorm, I overheard my friends talking about their periods. They giggled as they exchanged stories about how they handled cravings, and one of them confidently said, "With this, we need no man," as the others cheered in agreement. They explained how they had learned to satisfy themselves during their periods, even when their bodies craved a man's touch. It sounded so empowering, and I admired their confidence. They shared their little secrets about finding pleasure all on their own. "It's like a little adventure you can have whenever you want," one friend added, her eyes full of excitement. I listened, fascinated, as they described how they explored their bodies and discovered what made them feel good. They made it sound so easy and fun, like a special gift just for girls. At first, I felt shy about the whole idea. It seemed like a bold step, but the more I listened, the more curious I became. They explained how using their hands or even objects could help them feel relaxed and happy. It was as if they had unlocked a secret door to a whole new world. With each story, I started to see how important it was for girls to understand their bodies and find ways to feel good, especially during those times when everything felt overwhelming. The idea that we didn't need a man to find satisfaction felt liberating, and it made me think about how I could explore my own feelings. The conversations inspired me to embrace that freedom, to focus on discovering myself and finding comfort in my own skin. As I listened to their laughter and stories, a sense of excitement bubbled inside me. I knew I had much to learn, but I was ready to explore my own path, just like my friends had done. One day after school, I decided to ask one of my friends about it. "What's a doodle?" I whispered, nervous but curious. She smiled and explained that it was something some girls used to find comfort during their periods, especially when they felt strange. She encouraged me to try it if I ever felt curious or restless. "It's just for you," she said. "You can explore your body and see what feels good." Although I wasn't sure if I was ready, the idea lingered in my mind like a mystery waiting to be solved. Eventually, I decided to try using the doodle. I was nervous yet excited, not really knowing what to expect. I remembered my friends' descriptions of the pleasure it brought them. One afternoon, when I had some time to myself, I decided to give it a try. I was surprised by how good it felt. The pleasure was so intense, almost like a wave washing over me. It melted away all the tension and restlessness I had been feeling. I found myself getting lost in the experience, feeling free and happy. It was something I had never fully understood until I tried it for myself. From that day forward, using the doodle became a special secret that I cherished. Even when I went to university, I carried that experience with me. I realized that I could use it whenever I felt the familiar signs of my period approaching. It became part of my routine, a way to help myself feel comfortable during those days. I looked forward to it, knowing I had a way to find both relief and pleasure. Now that I was on my period again, I was determined to try it once more. I thought about how much I had enjoyed it in the past and was eager to relive those feelings. I found a quiet moment in my dorm room, ensuring I had privacy, and I prepared myself. My heart raced with anticipation as I smiled at the thought of the pleasure that awaited me. I settled in, feeling a mix of excitement and comfort. Closing my eyes, I remembered the sensations from before and let myself dive into the experience. I was ready to explore my body and embrace the sensations it brought. It was my time to unwind and enjoy the pleasure that was just for me. When I finally used it, I felt a rush of pleasure unlike anything I had experienced before. It was like a wave of warmth washing over me, and I couldn't help but smile. Each time I explored my body this way, I discovered something new about myself. It was thrilling and gave me a sense of freedom I had never known. Over time, I realized that I didn't need a boyfriend to feel happy or fulfilled. At first, I thought it might be strange to focus so much on my own pleasure, especially when many of my friends were dating or talking about their crushes. They often joked about needing a boyfriend for certain things, but I felt content with what I had discovered. I felt in control of my own happiness. Sure, there were moments when I wondered if I was missing out on something by not having a boyfriend. I saw my friends sharing sweet moments with their partners, and I thought it might be nice to experience that connection. But then I remembered the joy I felt during my private moments. I realized I was perfectly fine without a boyfriend for now. This was my time to learn who I was and what made me feel good. I was learning to love myself, and that felt empowering. I enjoyed those private moments, and they brought me comfort and peace. I knew my journey of self-discovery was just beginning, and I was excited to learn more about myself without worrying about what anyone else thought. After satisfying myself, I felt completely relaxed and content. I lay on my bed, a smile still on my face, letting my body sink into the soft mattress. It felt so good to finally unwind after a busy day at university. As I closed my eyes and let the peaceful silence wrap around me like a cozy blanket, I suddenly heard a soft knock on the door. The sound startled me and I quickly sat up, my heart racing. Who could it be, I wondered. I hadn't expected anyone at this hour. The knock came again, gentle but persistent, urging me to get up. I opened the door, surprised to find my uncle standing there. He stepped into my room with a strange expression I had never seen before, making me feel uneasy. It was like a cold shiver running down my spine. I quickly sat up, trying to shake off the unease and convince myself everything was fine. "Are you okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my heart was racing. I studied his expression, trying to figure out what was going on. There was something in his eyes that unsettled me, something that sent warning signals in my mind. He glanced around the room almost as though searching for something. "Yeah, I'm fine," he replied, his voice too casual. He took a step closer and I felt a flutter of anxiety. I shifted on my bed, trying to keep the conversation light despite the growing tension. "What brings you here?" I asked, trying to sound friendly, even as my stomach tightened. I noticed how he focused on me, studying me in a way that felt different from the usual uncle-niece dynamic. "I just wanted to check on you," he said slowly, his voice low. "I haven't seen you in a while." There was something unsettling in his tone, making me doubt his intentions. I tried to brush it off, to believe he was just being a caring uncle, but my instincts told me otherwise. I forced a smile, hoping to ease the tension. "I'm fine, really, just relaxing," I replied, trying to sound cheerful. But deep down, I felt a mix of confusion and discomfort. Why was he here? What was that look in his eyes? My mind raced with questions. I could tell from his expression that something was different. The intensity in his eyes made me uneasy, almost like he was signaling something I wasn't ready to understand. It felt like he wanted to be closer, maybe even join me on the bed. I swallowed hard, my heart racing at the thought. His gaze lingered a little too long, and I felt a shiver down my spine, as if he was silently expressing a desire that made me uncomfortable. I wanted to convince myself I was imagining things, but deep down I knew his look wasn't normal. I shifted uncomfortably, trying to break the tension that seemed to hang in the air. "Is there something you want to talk about?" I asked, hoping to steer the conversation in a safer direction. My voice trembled slightly, but I tried to sound brave. He hesitated, his expression wavering between concern and something much more unsettling. "I just wanted to see how you were doing, that's all," he replied. But there was a weight behind his words that made me doubt him. I could feel my heart pounding as I looked into his eyes, wanting to tell him that his presence and the way he was looking at me made me uncomfortable. I didn't want things to change between us. The words I wanted to say wouldn't come out, so instead I nervously played with the edge of my blanket, trying to center myself. I thought back to all the times my uncle had been kind and supportive, but it was difficult to reconcile that person with the one standing in front of me now. "I'm fine, really, just studying and relaxing," I repeated, hoping to push away the growing unease. Yet, even as I said it, I could see something flicker in his eyes, a hint of something unspoken that made me want to retreat even further into myself. I wished I could just close the door again, create some space, and remind myself that I was safe in my own room. But before I could act, he moved closer to me, and my heart sank as he said, "We should have some fun together." The words hung in the air, and I felt a wave of panic rush over me. I wanted to move away, put some distance between us, but my body felt frozen as he stepped closer. It was hard to breathe, and I was caught off guard. Before I could even respond, he leaned in and kissed me on my chest. A cold chill ran through me, and I felt flooded with confusion and fear. This was not the kind of fun I had ever imagined. I realized then that I was in a situation I never wanted to be in. I pushed him away gently, trying to keep my composure. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice trembling. I felt a storm of emotions, anger, fear, and a deep sense of betrayal. This wasn't how family was supposed to behave. I had always trusted him, and now that trust was shattered. His face shifted, and for a brief moment I saw what might have been surprise or frustration. "Come on, don't be like that," he said, attempting to close the distance again. My heart raced as I realized I had to stand firm. "This isn't right," I said firmly, my voice shaking but resolute. "You can't do this. You're my uncle." The words felt heavy, but I knew I had to say them. I could see his attitude shift, and I took a step back, pressing myself against the wall. A surge of determination rose within me. I wouldn't let him take advantage of me, no matter how much he tried to twist the situation. I had to protect myself, and in that moment, I understood the importance of setting boundaries. "Please leave my room," I said, my voice steady despite the fear rushing through me. I knew I had to be strong. I wouldn't let this moment define me or take away my sense of safety. My body wasn't ready for any man, especially not after I had just taken the time to care for myself. I had felt peace and contentment in that private experience, and I didn't want anything to disrupt that feeling. When I saw the disappointment in his eyes, it stung a little, but I didn't care. I knew I had every right to feel the way I did. This was my body, my choice, and I wasn't going to let anyone dictate how I should feel or what I should want. His expression was a mix of confusion and frustration, but I realized that this was not about him. I had made the decision to prioritize myself and my own well-being, and that was more important than any expectation he had. I wouldn't let his disappointment overshadow my own satisfaction. "I'm not in the mood," I said firmly, hoping he understood. I wanted him to know that I wasn't just an object to be used whenever he felt like it. This was my space, my sanctuary, and I needed him to respect that. The silence between us grew, and I could see him grappling with his emotions. Part of me felt sorry for him, but I quickly reminded myself that I had to put my own well-being first. I had the right to say no and protect my feelings and desires. "I hope you understand," I added, trying to soften my tone a little. "It's just not the right time for me." He sighed, and I could tell he was still disappointed, but I stood my ground. I was proud of myself for standing up for what I wanted and not allowing anyone to push me into something I wasn't ready for. In that moment, I felt empowered, and I knew that I would always prioritize my own feelings and choices above all else.